And of course, this is still our DA, and let's start off with giving you a bit of background story into what we will be discussing first. Now, 6 months ago, the appeals were brought before the tribunal by the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and his counterpart in the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, challenging the declaration by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, that Tinubu of the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, was the valid winner of the presidential elections held on February 25th. Atiku and Obi prayed the apex court set aside the September 6th judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Court, PEPC, which dismissed their allegation that the election was rigged in favor of the ruling party. Now, today, Nigeria's presidential election judicial crossfire finally came to a conclusive end in favor of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress. The 6-month battle definitely came with lessons that may shape the future of elections in Nigeria. Let's take a look at this clip.
My noble lords, a combined reading of
He presented the issue of forfeiture as a fine imposed on the second respondent for the proceeds of narcotics and money laundering by the District Court of Illinois. I sat down through, I did not hear it. Yes, it has been laid to rest. The Supreme Court has the authority to interpret the Constitution. It is their prerogative as the arm of government imbued with the power to interpret. That is the interpretation they have given to it, and it is binding on us all. That's what I'm going to say on it. Even the Supreme Court agrees that the election was not credible, or as credible as it ought to have been if the result was uploaded. So credibility is one of the three arms of an election for the people: free, fair, and credible.
Like the judge said, all litigation must come to an end. They addressed all the issues, about 7 of them, and those issues were and the judgments on each of the issues were clearly unassailable as far as I'm concerned. So for me now is the time for us all, every Nigerian, particularly the president, to roll up his sleeves and continue with the governance. This has been a distraction. The litigants exercise their rights to go to court, but that has come to an end now. We now have to all come together as one country, one people, and move ahead and take this country where it rightfully should be. We're happy, we're excited.
Now, joining us to give an insight into what transpired at the court before, during, and after the judgment is News Central's Abuja Bureau Chief, Amadin. Amadin, great to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Amadin. You've been following this for quite a while now. Are you, like Kenneth Okonkwo said, it has finally come to an end? How does it feel to eventually see the end of this lengthy, should I say, about 6-month tribunal?
Now, just like you said, it's been a very, very long process, but we are glad that finally Nigerians can now rest, members of our political class can now rest, and then we can face those who are saddled with the responsibility, who have been elected, can face the business of governance. Then for us as journalists, we can face the business of constructively criticizing them on policies, on initiatives, on interventions, and others that they choose to bring to Nigerians in a bid to fulfill their promises of trying to make Nigerians get the maximum benefit from dividends of democracy.
Okay, now, Amadin, some specific issues that were addressed include submission of fresh evidence. There was a 25% vote cast in the FCT that there was that clause there, and then there was also the transmission of results, IREV, by INEC, amongst certain other issues. Do you think the court's, the court's response was exhaustive enough and completely encompassed all, if not or most, if not all, of these issues that were laid before the court?
For me, if you had followed the PEPT, just as Dapo had earlier said, the PPTV were very extensive in their judgment. Some say it was the longest judgment given for quite a while or in any election petitions case. And what I mean by they were extensive was that for each issue they tried to address, each issue they tried to tackle, they gave reasons, citing several clauses of the Constitution. And then when the appeal was filed to the Supreme Court, we had a lot of fireworks from both sides, but everybody knew the rules of the Supreme Court. First of all, when the Supreme Court talked about fresh evidence, there were two issues the Supreme Court raised today, the Apex Court raised today, which were very clear. Number one, the Apex Court stated clearly that for an issue that was not discussed, entertained at the lower court, that is at the PEPT, which was sitting at the Court of Appeal, they said it was ludicrous to now bring it to the Supreme Court, urging the Supreme Court to discuss these issues. Some of these issues that had to do with the certificate of the president. Some of these parties did not file it at the lower courts. But we are surprised that all of a sudden they came up saying there was a deposition that it should be tendered as evidence. And the Supreme Court said, no, based on our rules, we will only discuss issues that were discussed at the lower court. Secondly, the Supreme Court stated emphatically that the reason why a presidential election tribunal has a timeline is because those who had amended the Constitution thought that they wanted the whole process to take some time, and then whoever wins or whatever the outcome, those who are responsible will face the business of governance. Now there was a stipulated time frame where you would present evidences, where you would present your witnesses, and now those time frames had elapsed right from the judgment or right from the time of the Presidential Election Petition Court. And now, after those time frames have elapsed, you are now approaching the higher court, which is the Supreme Court, and you are now saying clearly that the Supreme Court should accept this evidence that you did not submit within the stipulated time frame when the PEPT was sitting at the Court of Appeal. You now come to the Supreme Court. Remember that at several times when lawyers had come on News Central, they had insisted that the guidelines were very strict, and the Supreme Court would try its best to ensure that it keeps to those guidelines. It will be very, very difficult, akin to a camel passing through the eye of the needle, for the Supreme Court to just get up and say, okay, you have fresh evidence, submit it. So that is the first issue. Then now we talked about 25% in FCT. Now remember very clearly that for every law, every act, the Nigerian Constitution is the ground norm. And the Nigerian Constitution states very, very clearly. That was what I'm trying to paraphrase what the PEPT judgment, I'm trying to what the lawyers at the PEPT said. They said for every, that the Nigerian Constitution, any clause that goes outside the Nigerian Constitution or tries to infringe on the clauses of the Nigerian Constitution is null and void. The Nigerian Constitution states very clearly that every Nigerian has equal rights. To now insinuate that because of, for the sake of election, that 25%, that if those in the FCT, you can't score 25%, you cannot be declared president. For those who are watching it, who have been following this case, it was sort of laughable. Because Bernard, I can tell you, imagine if you were the one contesting elections and you won 36 states of the federal of Nigeria you did not win Abuja. You got Abuja with 23%. Now, with the constitution now say, because you have won 36 states and did not get 25% in the FCT, therefore you cannot be sworn as president.
But Amadin, people would also say, I mean, if the law says that it is, that's what it is, then irrespective of whatever parameters, if that's what's stated in the law, then one would want to say you are bound by it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, we might not be able.
That is why I first quoted the Constitution. The Nigerian Constitution says that every citizen of this country has equal rights. That means you are indirectly saying that those who introduced it into the Electoral Act, they have given the residents of the FCT. So remember that in times past, when certain acts clash with the Nigerian Constitution and it goes to court, the court will throw those clauses out because they will say it is contravening the clauses, contravening the clauses of the Constitution. The Constitution is the grand norm. Now, I don't want to judge as a lawyer.
Amadin, we can't even try that because the Supreme Court has already even given the verdict. Exactly. And of course, it's binding on everyone. But what I want to ask you is this. Number one, what is the mood like right now in the Federal Capital Territory? I can tell you that for sure, right now in Ikeja axis of Lagos State, at least where we are at the moment, maybe the Uhuru hasn't started yet. maybe there's still got to be some sort of mega celebration, from the ruling party, who knows? But what's the mood right now at the base of power, since this verdict has been given? And also, number two, would you say, based on what we've seen, or the mood at the court, and also the mood generally where you are at the moment, that this judicial process has boosted the confidence of people in the judicial system moving forward? Amadin, are you there?
I can hear you. I can get you now. Come again.
Okay. So my second question is, would you say that this entire, judicial crossfire has sort of boosted the confidence of people in Nigeria's judicial system?
Now, when you say boosted the confidence of people in Nigeria's judicial system, let me start with that. First of all, there was an election. And in that election, there were close to 90 million voters, but we saw only 27 million participants. Now, 8 million, one candidate won with 8 million, and two other candidates got 6 million. Definitely, among their support base, there will be different reaction. If I was in the camp of Peter Obi, or let me say Atiku Abubakar, certainly I will be depressed because maybe I had high hopes. I had expectations that the Supreme Court will give a different judgment. But if I was in the camp of President Tinubu, it will be jubilation all along for me. So that question sometimes is subjective. It depends on the camp you are facing, or you are trying to put your focus on. But what I know is that whenever there is an election, no matter how controversial, no matter how bad, no matter the perception of a candidate, he has his own fan base. So if you focus on the fan base of the candidate that is losing, it will be easy for you to say morale has gone down, people are disappointed. But the only thing I can say is that the process of an election does not end after the announcement of results. At least the Nigerian scenario has told us that. The process ends after the Supreme Court has finally adjudicated on all the issues. And today, the Supreme Court has come out to say, this is our position. No matter how much you look at how some people go and whine and cry on social media or continue to put their own opinion, the truth about the matter is that the Supreme Court has adjudicated on this matter and passed its judgment. It will be unfair to focus on the supporters of a particular candidate or a particular political party and assume that their position is speaking for the generality of all Nigerians. That is why I stated that there was an election, one candidate got 6 million votes, another candidate got 6 million votes, and the third candidate got 8 million votes. Now, if you ask me what is the mood like, I will tell you that people in the FCT are going about their normal businesses. For the politicians and the political parties, those who think that they have come out on top, they will be rejoicing. But we cannot say because the camp of Tinubu are rejoicing, then it is the position of the entire country. No, that is the position of their supporters. What we should look at is that right now, the Supreme Court has passed a judgment on this issue, and that is the highest court in the land. Then we as Nigerians are expected to move on, except God himself comes out to say, I want to judge this case because he is the only one that is higher than the Supreme Court.
Of course. I was just looking at clips of, just looking on the screen there, clips of some of the celebrations that you talked about from the ruling party,
yes,
who have won.
This happened almost immediately.
Almost immediately, exactly.
After the decision,
yeah, I can see
the verdict
was exactly. We can see members of the president's team, if you like to speak it, put it that way, appointees of the president. I believe they came to deliver the message, good news. But I'm sure he had heard before they arrived. This was just to formalize and a short few words of prayers. Let's listen to what happened just there.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations, Your Excellency. Your job is secured. Spoke to. Your job is secured. Congratulations, Your Excellency. Gentlemen, congratulations to the President. Having been confirmed by the Supreme Court as the 5-star general. Yes. As the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you. Congratulations, Your Excellencies. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you.
Like the president's ADC, they say, having been confirmed a 5-star general by the Supreme Court of Nigeria, and then that was a gallant salute. Congratulations to Mr. President. Well, like you clearly stated, Amadin, and I totally agree with your last response. It's going to be three-pronged, the response of the people or the mood of the people. There'll be those who will be going about their daily businesses. There'll be those who will be celebrating, like we just saw there. And of course, there'll be those who still will be aggrieved, like the lawyer who was speaking. That's Kenneth Okonkwo, who was speaking for Labour Party, and of course, representatives of Atiku Abubakar. But as we're letting you go now, very quickly, Amadin, in 1 minute, how will you say that this scenario has shaped the future of Nigeria's electoral process, and what now lies ahead for Nigerians and for the president himself? Just very quickly.
Okay, first of all, let me take the positives. Once upon a time, we had elections in the past where Nigerian youths were not even interested. As a journalist, you'll be out on the streets on election days. You see Nigerian youths playing football, just doing something else. They will tell you that no, I'm not interested. But now, within the last 6 months, we've seen that by reason of one of the candidates, he has been able to pull the support base from the youth demography. And if you go on Twitter, you've seen this conversation has been very heated. A lot of youths, though the Supreme Court made the Supreme Court judgment, they will be disappointed from the Supreme Court. But at least we have a demography of Nigerians who are now interested in the electoral process. And this tells us that the 2027 election will be very interesting. We know there will be a lot of permutations, there will be a lot of cross-carpeting, but we definitely know that for the 2023 elections, a lot of Nigerians will be interested, especially from the youth demography. Remember that the Liberian election just happened a few days ago, and observers were saying that was an election that saw about 70% voter turnout. In Nigeria, we've not been able to achieve that. We had 90-something million voters, about 20-something came out. That is still around 20%. We are hoping that if the opposition play their role as a formidable opposition, maybe in the 2027 election, we'll be looking at a minimum of 50% voter participation.
Okay, Amadin, thank you so much. As a matter of fact, you introduced our next topic for the second segment, which is the Liberian elections. But once again, thank you so much to our Bureau Chief, Amadin. Amadin, I would have asked you which side you will be on. Will you be on the side going about your business? Will you be on the side mourning, or will you be on the side celebrating? But we're not going to say that on air. I would see you on social media to know which side you are on. Thank you so much, Amadin, for joining us today.
Thank you too.
All right, Dapo.
Interesting times.
A very interesting time with Amadin, and
Yes.
very interesting times in Nigeria.
True.
From the song you were singing, I already know which side you are on. I'm not just going to expose you right now, but I know the side you are
frankly
on.
Speaking, frankly speaking, just to clear the air,
Okay.
I'm actually apolitical.
Yeah, apolitical.
Yes.
All right.
I think what is more important right now, particularly for Nigeria and Nigerians, is how do we get that better life?
True.
You understand?
True.
We all know the festivities around the corner. We know what the price of the naira to the dollar is saying at the moment. A lot of business owners, particularly whose businesses rely on imports and exports, are complaining right now.
Yes.
I mean, I think as of today, $1 to the naira is about 1,300. We don't know what it would look like in the coming days, right? We also know what the price of basic food stuff, like rice. The last time I checked or I asked, I was told it's 55,000 naira. I'm not sure, but the person said about 55,000 naira for a bag of rice. You know, and we know what it used to look like before. This is festivities you're looking at when people will be with their families, will want to celebrate the New Year, want to celebrate Christmas and all of that. We also know how people are just trying to get by. So I think the bigger picture right now is it doesn't matter which camp you're on, whether you're with the APC, you're with the PDP, you're with some other political parties, LP and what have you. The big focus right now for many Nigerians is how do we ensure that things get better? How does life become bearable and affordable? We know what fuel price is saying at the pump stations right now, right? That's even basic. Some are selling it at about 600 plus. It's even scarce in some areas. You don't find it's not available. So those are real life issues. So irrespective of whoever is wearing that crown or that cap of leadership, the big question for Nigerians right now is what next?
What next?
Right? What next? That's the big issue.
Very true. What next? Well, unfortunately, these questions are not questions that we can answer in one show and at one time. We do hope that eventually we would bring back some of these topics. I have certain things I would like to talk about, but definitely not here and not
You
now.
want to shake tables?
When the time comes, we shall shake tables. But right now, we need to go on a very quick break. And when we come back, like Amadin has already introduced on our behalf, we'll be going to Liberia, where the election there is going into a rerun or a runoff, as you may like to say. This is not common in Africa, but it's happening in Liberia. Do stay with us.